Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the past week or so. And as is the norm, we always have a packed agenda of issues to discuss. I want to begin, as I normally would do, by welcoming our viewers who are joining us on television in Region 5, Mahaika to West Coast Berbice. Good evening and welcome to another program of Issues in the News. I want to welcome also our viewers who are joining us on television from Region 6. Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News. To our listeners and viewers who are joining us on Freedom Radio from Rob Street, Georgetown, welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News. And last but not least, to the thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live and on YouTube, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And please share this program, press that share button on your phone, press that share button on your computer, so that the widest possible audience can be part of our discourse. Ensure that your friends and family and followers join us in tonight's program, and you can make that possible by pressing that share button on your phone and bringing into the discourse the widest possible audience. Thank you very much once again, and let's start. Uh, I have been speaking about the efforts of the opposition, APNU AFC, efforts they are making actively to stall the local government election, or rather to prevent it from taking place. And many times on this program, I've listed the narrative of events and narrative of obstacles which they have thrown in the path of the local government electoral machinery, with the hope that they will manage or succeed in stopping the elections from taking place. The objective, or the reason rather, is simple. They do not want to go to the elections because of what they fear will be the outcome. So they have filed legal proceedings now. And in those legal proceedings, they are asking the court to declare the demarcation of constituency boundaries as unlawful. Now, permit me to refresh your memory, and you will recall that Minister Nigel Dharamlal, the local government minister, had first demarcated the boundaries, and they created great objections and made great objections in the press and at GCOM, saying that the minister did not have the power to do so, that GCOM is the authorized agency to do so. Well, we said that in the interest of moving the process forward, we will not object to GCOM exercising that power. And GCOM proceeded to demarcate the boundaries in compliance with their request. Now they have concocted another argument that the boundaries are wrong. So Dharamlal was wrong in the first instance, according to them, for exercising the power to demarcate the boundaries. Now GCOM has performed the power in accordance with their arguments and their submissions to GCOM. Now they are saying that the boundaries are wrong, that the boundaries are intended to create some electoral advantage for the PPP. And you will recall that when they were in government, Bolkan, I believe on 2 occasions, altered boundaries, and we went to the elections, and we trashed them comprehensively, both in 2016 and in 2018. And it's the same argument again. They went with the same electoral register, the same electoral list to the elections in 2015. They won. The same electoral list in 2011, they got a one-seat majority. Nothing was wrong with the list. Nothing was wrong with the voters' roll when they won those elections. 2020 elections, when they lost, it's a deeply flawed list. It's an inaccurate list. The list is inundated with dead people. Dead people voted. That is the mantra and the strategy of these people. Whenever they can't get their way, they fault the entire world. And that is their modus operandi once again at work. So they gone to the court now at this 11th hour in an effort to get some type of ruling to prevent the elections from taking place. So we have to go to the court, GCOM will have to go to the court and defend those proceedings. So we have to wait and see how that unfolds. But it is important. It is important that we remind you of the skullduggery, the rascality, and the political shenaniganism of this opposition. Tomorrow, we have some very important bills to debate in the National Assembly. You will see their performance there again. The inefficiency, the incompetence, the failure to prepare, the inability to make constructive contributions will be once again on display for you to see. So I invite you to follow the parliamentary proceedings tomorrow. We have several important bills, as I said, that will be debated, and it's important that you follow the process. We have, for example, the Foreign Judgment Reciprocal Enforcement Bill. That's a very important piece of legislation for the economic advancement and the commercial progress that we are making in Guyana. Guyana is obviously now an investment hub, an investment destination, and investors from all across the world are now coming to Guyana to invest, and we have to have the legal infrastructure in place that will allow for judgments obtained in Guyana to be enforced outside of Guyana, and also judgments obtained overseas against companies that are doing business in Guyana, for those judgments to be enforced here. It's something that is based on reciprocity. Our current act is one that we inherited from the colonial era, and this one now, which we are seeking to take to the debate in the parliament and get enacted, will repeal this relic that we have, this colonial relic, and will put on our statutory landscape the most modern expression of this law. We have followed a Commonwealth model, and at the back in the schedule of that bill, you have some 60-odd countries whose judgments now would become enforceable in Guyana, and similarly, Guyana will be able to enforce judgments granted here in those 60-odd countries. So it's a very important step in the modernization of our legal architecture. The other bill that is there for debate is the electronic cycle or motorcycle bill, in which we are seeking to put in a regulatory framework to govern the use of these motorcycles on our roadways. We are well aware of the carnage that takes place on our roadways, and none of us can be happy with the way that issue is evolving. And we have, as a government, been very proactive as well as reactive. And we have been passing different pieces of legislation directed to addressing this serious tragedy taking place in our country. These electrical cycles have been identified as a cause of concern. They have resulted in accidents. I'll produce the statistics tomorrow in the debate. And there has been a public demand for these users of the road to be regulated. So we are regulating them. Then I believe the other bill, the NISA bill, I'm not sure whether we will proceed with it. A decision has already been made that we will take same to a special select committee so that we can have greater engagement. There is a data protection bill that is out there. I spoke about it the last time, and I reported that there has not been any contribution either from the civil society organizations who are calling for this piece of legislation, nor from the opposition. Although we put it out there publicly, I issued a press statement from my ministry. It has been on my website for over 3 weeks, inviting submissions to it and recommendations for change. The last time I checked, we did not receive any. So that bill also has to be taken to the National Assembly. Another bill that will go to the National Assembly also for the first time would be the e-communications and transaction bill. And that is a bill that, in essence, will seek to install at the level of central government and in the state apparatus the legal framework for transactions that are currently done manually to be done electronically, and for the use of e-signature. So whatever we used to do manually in the government, all these processes now, this bill will lay the platform for them to be done and conducted by electronic means and through electronic platforms. So the payment of cash, for example, is not going to be replaced, but the infrastructure and regulatory framework at the level of the law will now be put in place to allow for those payments to be made by means other than cash, by electronic wire transfer, by credit cards, and other medium or media out there. So that's another important piece of law reform that's taking place in our parliament come tomorrow. Someone asked me to give an update on the parking meter case. As you know, that case, it is at an international arbitration tribunal in Washington, D.C. We retained a law firm in Washington, D.C., and they are representing our legal interest. Just 2 weeks ago, lawyers from that law firm war in Guyana, to interview potential witnesses and take statements from those potential witnesses as the process unfolds for the preparation of our defense in the matter. So that matter is ongoing. But there is another matter that I want to bring to your attention. And again, I see the opposition speaking a lot about the national interest and protection of Guyanese patrimony and accusing our government of being anti-national. I mean, these people are the last set or last grouping of persons to speak on these matters, but I will deal with that a little later. But I just wanted to bring to your attention that in 2018, in April 2018, on the 13th of April actually, through the GRDB, they signed a contract and sold and delivered a quantity of rice from Guyana. Through the agency of the Rice Marketing Development Board, they entered into a contract with the government of Panama, and they sold and delivered a quantity of rice totaling some $7.1 million, along with interest, and they never attempted to secure payment for the rice farmers' rice. 7.1 million US, along with interest, they left abandoned in Panama. Our government now has to shoulder the responsibility and take the necessary legal recourse to recover these monies on behalf of our rice farmers. In fact, some of the millers have commenced legal proceedings against the rice board, claiming the money is outstanding. These are farmers who deliver their rice to the rice board as instructed by the government of the day. The government of the day boasted that they secured a new market for rice, sold and delivered the rice farmers' rice and the millers' rice on credit, and never attempted to recover any payment. Our government now is forced to file proceedings at the International Chamber of Arbitration in France to recover this debt. And that is how they conducted their business in government. The parking meter, they clean up. Their mess, we have to clean up. Now, this matter in Panama. Monies have to be expended to retain lawyers, international lawyers, to prosecute and defend these claims. And these are the people who are running around this country and accusing our government of being anti-national and unpatriotic. And that is their legacy. I thought that I'll bring you up to speed on that matter as well. I want to also congratulate St. Lucia. I just read on the news that St. Lucia has finally amended their constitution that has paved the way for them to have the Caribbean Court of Justice as their final appellate court. They now join Guyana, Barbados, Belize, and Dominica as countries that have acceded to the request by the CCJ to appoint that court as the final appeal court in the Caribbean. And the government and people of St. Lucia must be commended for this important step. It augurs well for Caribbean jurisprudence, and it augurs well for the integration movement in the region. So, a lot is being said and have been said about the ruling of Justice Kissoon last Wednesday, when His Honor granted certain declarations against the Environmental Protection Agency. The government of Guyana issued a statement in relation to that ruling, and that statement has evoked great criticisms in the public domain. The President, the Vice President, yours truly, and indeed our entire government has been or have been the subject of scathing criticisms. We have been accused of being anti-national, etc. Permit me to say, first of all, that our government is as national and as patriotic as they come. And we have a track record in the People's Progressive Party. We have a track record of nationalistic conduct and patriotic behavior and postures. In the height of the PNC dictatorship, we took positions that we considered in the national interest and in the interest of the state of Guyana. It is under our government that we settled that long border dispute with Suriname. It is under our government that we began a process in relation to the controversial claim by Venezuela to part of our national patrimony. That we started a process a long time ago, years ago, that has culminated in proceedings being instituted at the International Court of Justice. And we have successfully, so far, navigated the ship of Guyana carefully forward towards what we hope will be a complete judicial settlement of that dispute. And we didn't jump straight into litigation. We diligently followed a course, every course of that international journey, with the hope of resolving the matter. And we are where we are now as a result of a recommendation from the United Nations. We used all the international protocols and utilized all the international avenues available. That is acting in the national interest and protecting our patrimony. So I'm not too worried about those allegations. But we are in government, and being in government doesn't provide us with the luxury of taking emotional positions. We have to recognize what is in the nation's best interest and act accordingly as we were elected to do. And that is what we are doing in every one of our policy endeavors and implementation. Guyana is where it is now because of the oil and gas industry. Yes, we are operating with a very skewed contract, and we have stated our position repeatedly in relation to that. We have a 5-year plan, national developmental plan, that we have to finance from revenues generated. The main source of revenue stream now in Guyana is the oil and gas sector. And of course, we are building a diversified economy to ensure that there is not undue reliability on that sector, but that is a work in progress. The Minister of Natural Resources has repeatedly disclosed that from the local content bill, local content law alone, we have raked in some $700 million US dollar in business, 700 million US from that one initiative. And it is growing. And we have to review it so that we can make it bigger and draw down heavier. We have, up to last month, 1.4 billion US dollar in the Natural Resource Fund. Investments, opportunities are exploding in Guyana. Our infrastructure and construction industries are booming. All of this drives our national economy. We are growing at a rate of nearly 50% per annum, faster and higher than any other country. And source of the funding is from this industry. As a government, we are cognizant of this, We have a gas to shore project. That is another one of the largest projects in the Caribbean, capital project in the Caribbean. There apparently is a group of persons in Guyana that want to see us in a perpetual state of poverty. They object if we exploit our forestry resources. They object if we exploit our minerals. They are now objecting to us exploiting our oil reserves and gas reserves. Apparently, their vision for Guyana is that we must be kept to the mud and we must continue to be cane cutters and rice farmers, and we mustn't graduate out of that level. To our west is Venezuela, a few miles away from here. They have been pumping oil for 100 years. To our north is Trinidad. They have been pumping oil for 100 years. And they have enriched their country and their people. And the world did not come to an end. The world did not come to an end. Guyana has become an oil producer in 2019. And Guyana's oil production apparently will end the world and will completely annihilate our environment. And that is being fed. That diet is being fed perpetually, daily. But as a government, we have to plod on, and perhaps we will be vindicated in the future. The judge has ruled, and the government has signaled its position, and we are committed to that course. The Honorable Justice Sandil Kisoon is a judge for whom I have the highest of regards, and who has indeed acquitted himself on the bench with distinction. But it is my humble view that he fell into error. And, like in any other case, a person aggrieved has a right to appeal. I've listened to civil society organizations and persons, and I respect their views. They have a view, and I respect that. The opposition, as usual, they await to hear what civil society and others say, and then they join a bandwagon of opportunism. They have no original thought and thinking. They can't form an opinion for themselves. They wait until someone says something, and then they simply echo it. They parrot and mimic what others say. And that's what I've always said, that this bunch is incapable of original thinking. So they merrily join the bandwagon as an alternative government. A couple of points that I want to make. Firstly, when they did the Lisa permit, it had no provision for insurance. It had no parent guarantee. They will not say that. They granted an environmental permit that was 20 years in length when the law only permits 5 years. Let me repeat. They granted an environmental permit without these clauses for 20 years when the law only permitted or permits a 5-year permit. It's our government that has issued the new permits with these very clauses, and it's our government that went to the court and say, court, this 20-year environmental permit is illegal and violates the act. And we reduced it to 5 years in keeping with the law. We impose a punitive regime in relation to flaring. They had none. I say that to you so that you recognize that these opposition members, they don't have any moral authority to speak on this issue. None. That's the first thing. Secondly, the case is under appeal, and what I want to say is will be constrained by the fact that the matter is still in the court. But in my humble view, a document has to be read in its entirety before one gets the true meaning of what the parties intended in relation to that document. There is no doubt that the document requires the license holder to provide a regime of security, and it lists for what reasons, and that there is a requirement for a payment guarantee. But the issue, as you would recognize, is the unlimited nature. Now, there are clauses in the in the permit, that one can rely on. For example, the forms of financial assurance shall be guided by an estimate of the sum of reasonably credible costs, expenses, and liabilities that may arise from any breaches of the permit. You get the impression of unlimited liabilities here? Liabilities are considered to include costs associated with responding to an incident, cleanup and remediation, and monitoring. The estimation is not expected to address unidentifiable or inestimable costs which may be associated with compensation for loss and ongoing damages to other parties, which are able to pursue, which parties are able to pursue through civil actions. These are important terminologies. Then it says this: the permit holder must, as soon as reasonably practicable, provide from the parent company or affiliate companies or permit holder and its co-venturers one or more legally binding agreements to the agency in which the parent company or affiliate companies of permit holder and its co-venturers undertake to provide adequate financial resources for the permit holder. Adequate financial resources. The judge took a different view. The judge read these identical documents, and came to a different conclusion. But I am reading them there, and you have heard them, and in my humble view, they speak to limitations, to estimations, and not unquantifiable. It speaks to international industry standards and practices. Go to America, the United States of America, and look internationally at the regime of liability coverage. The United States have a pollution act that speaks to a limit of, I believe, 175 million US. Great Britain has a legislation that speaks to a limit of 250 million. And go to those jurisdictions, they have been producing oil, and they are considered first world countries, democracies. And this language that you hear me read here are drawn from the Act and imported and put into the permit. They are not made up. They are taken from the Act and transposed into the permit. And you know, the other thing that is important is that the process was ongoing. Now, as I said previously, you didn't have this regime in place. We put this regime in place. And we were in the process of complying with the regime. And the judge recognized that at page 44 of his judgment. He said this: the agency, through its director, further contended in this regard. The permit holder had retained the services of a consultant to guide this process, and the agency. The consultant and the permit holder were engaged in reviewing potential methodologies and engaged in data collection. In addition, the Attorney General of Guyana and the agency, on behalf of the government of Guyana, were in negotiations with ESSO, the permit holder, to secure compliance and negotiate a parent or affiliate company agreement, which was in draft. So this process was ongoing and is ongoing. But the judge rejected those arguments. These arguments, the judge is saying here, these arguments on the part of ESSO and the agency are entirely without merit. Here a report is being made that this process of satisfying the conditions of this guarantee is an ongoing one. Negotiations are going on. Yes, they may be taking a long time to conclude, but the judge ruled in the manner that he did. And that's why I'm saying that the criticisms that are being leveled against the government ought to be reviewed sensibly, and persons should read the conditions that are in the permit themselves. The permit, let me read another clause. The permit holder shall have a valid and effective environmental liability insurance of such type and in such amount as is customary in the international petroleum industry. I see somewhere they're saying that there was no requirement for an insurance, but it is saying here that you require an insurance, and the parent guarantee is an assurance. And once you use the term insurance, the liability cannot be unlimited. You insure a risk. That risk has a value. it is an estimate. No one knows. So you have to accept that which is reasonable. The risk has to have a value. How does an insurance company insure a risk that is not capable of bearing a value? What are you insuring? Infinitum? Alpha and Omega? How do you determine the premium of a risk that is limitless? So there are a lot of conceptual misinterpretation, in my humble view, that we need to clear up. Hence the position of the government. We are a major stakeholder in this industry. Have you ever thought for one moment what will happen tomorrow if that license is revoked and the operation comes to a halt? How many persons will go immediately bankrupt? Are people thinking how many loans have been taken from the bank? How much investments have been made in reliance upon this industry? Anybody thinking about those risks and the consequences that will flow therefrom? Now, we are not oblivious to the dangers of an environmental disaster. It is because we are cognizant of those possibilities that we have imposed these conditionalities to protect the very people of Guyana. The license holders, their liability is not capped. Their liability is not capped. But of course, you have to prove damages. And they are liable for all damages arising out of their operation. So, I think I should not say much more because I believe I've spent a lot of time. And as I said, the case is still before the courts, and we will have to see how it unfolds. So I'm trying to look at some of the comments that are coming up here to see if I can answer some of the issues that are being raised. There's one gentleman who I see is writing all the time about if the judge said about full coverage insurance, then leave it there. Where will the company get the full coverage insurance from? That's the issue. And anyone who understands the industry will understand what I'm speaking about. So, I'm informed that the EPA has already filed their appeal, and other legal steps are being taken in relation to the judgment? I see somebody has asked me that question. So if you would like me to deal with any issues, please send me the question here. Someone asked me about unlimited parent guarantee. I spoke about that already. The 18 million persons are bringing up the 18 million that they lied about. 18 million signing bonus guarantee that they never disclosed. Never disclosed. Put it in an account that was not part of the consolidated fund. When the Constitution says that all monies must be paid into the consolidated fund. Completely ignore that provision. And when questioned about it, the then Minister of Finance, Mr. Jordan, said that no such money was received and no such money was deposited in any account. And then, subsequently, stated that he thought that there was some private arrangement and that he didn't know about it. And these guys are accusing our government of not acting in the best interest of our country. Someone asked a question about the national intelligence legislation. As I said, that bill will go to a select committee and we will take it from there. There is nothing for me to add to that. Let me see if somebody is asking who is financing the EPA. The EPA is a state agency and is financed from public funds. So that's where the EPA is being financed from. Somebody is asking me to speak about Mr. Glenn Lal's proceedings in court. I don't know which one of the proceedings you're referring to. If you can be a little more specific, update on the Patterson scales, that matter, again, that matter is in the court system. It is before a high court judge and the cases are ongoing. Persons have been asking me for updates in these cases and they would like these cases to be concluded, and so would I. But I keep explaining that the government does not control the court system. The judiciary is independent. And when we file a proceedings in the court, or any party for that matter, file a proceedings in the court determines the pace at which the proceedings move and how the proceedings are heard and determined. But government is regularly being criticized in relation to this matter about the sloth of these cases, including the criminal cases filed out of incidents relating to the March 2nd, 2020 elections. The cases are in the courts, and I've been critical of the pace at which these cases are proceeding, and also the basis for adjournments that have been granted by magistrates, and also the reasons that magistrates have given for recusing themselves from hearing and determining these cases. But these are, other than bring it to your attention, there is very little that a government can do in a democracy when there is this kind of conduct. I have asked the prosecutor to prepare a report, and hopefully he does it, and will make that report public. And he will outline in that report what is the status of each case, when they were filed, and which magistrate they are before, and the steps that have been taken by the magistrate and by the defense counsel and by the prosecutor themselves, a status update on the cases. And once I get that, we can share that with the public. But these are cases that government are not involved in. The Director of Public Prosecution is in charge of prosecuting criminal cases. Government is not involved in prosecuting criminal cases. So my operator is indicating to me that we have come now to program time, and this is where I have to say goodbye and join me again next week. As I said, we are in Parliament tomorrow. Join us tomorrow in the National Assembly and tune into the several debates and the business of the National Assembly, which will be conducted, important national business. And I will see you next week, Tuesday, as we continue to discuss the important events taking place in Guyana. Thank you very much for staying with me over the past hour or so, and please enjoy the rest of the evening and the rest of the week. Thank you very much until I see you next week. Stay safe. Thank you.